Welcome to So You Want to Be an Ally, where we share our stories
and our insights on non-Black allyship to Black women.
My name is Darlene. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. You'll find me at the intersection of Black mama drama, raising a teenage Black boy, and Black mental health matters, serving the underrepresented and underserved. I help parents advocate for their Black and brown kids' emotional and racial identity development needs. And that's because our kids deserve the opportunity to grow, learn, strive, and thrive. Hashtag Black Girl Magic, hashtag Black Boy Joy.
And my name is Olanike. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And my life experience led me to becoming an advocate for equity in the workplace, which led me to starting a training and consulting business where I help workplaces who want to do better. Listen, if the people who achieve the greatest markers of success in your workplace are predictable by race, gender, orientation, or some other dimension of diversity, you should look into that.
You can email us at wannabeanally@gmail.com. That's wanna, WANNABBE, and AN, ally, ALLY, @gmail.com. That's one word, with your thoughts and any discussion topics you want to share.
Want to be an ally? Gather round.
And listen up.
So, Darlene, the question of the day is, why do you need to be an ally in the first place? I mean, why should anyone even want to be an ally? What's the point? What do you think?
So I have two different views on that, right? And this is, of course, like I told you, based on my experiences, both with parenting, with being working in the workplace, in my educational, academic arena. There's a part of me that says, I don't really need anyone else adding to my situation. Meaning, I don't need any other voices. We, as a group of Black people, we got enough to kind of manage, and we need to be the voice of our story, of our experience.
Yes.
But then I've also realized from those same experiences that because we are a part of a larger systemic and oppressive structure, that the people who make those decisions and the people who control decision making and are considered quote unquote the majority, and what I mean by majority, not number wise, but influence and power, then if I really expect to make any change, I'm gonna have to align with those people. Yeah. Now, how we do it, of course, is a whole nother podcast. But if I'm answering the question of why do we need one, or do we even need one in the first place, if I'm being honest about what's going on, I'm gonna have to say it's necessary. And I don't know if even framing the why do you need. So again, another question about
let's go there.
You want to go there? Okay, let's
why do I need Yeah.
You sound like you have some intention behind that. You go ahead and build on it.
Well, I think there's this there's this tension and mix up that happens when people are having conversation about the history of oppression and discrimination and inequity, like all of it.
Yep.
Oftentimes when people are talking to each other, they're talking to each other on a different level. Like there is the individual level of conversation, and a lot of non-Black people, or actually not even just non-Black, a lot of white people or privileged people, if you're talking about gender, it might be the men, right, versus the women. But the group or the person that is a member of the privileged group is talking from an individual perspective. Well, I'm not sexist, I'm not racist, but the member of the marginalized group, me, and when I'm in that conversation as a Black woman, I'm talking about the top, whatever it is that we're talking about, I'm addressing it not on an individual level. I need you to understand that this is happening on a systemic level.
Yep.
I need you to understand that when I'm saying that a certain behavior or something is racist or oppressive, it's because it's not just an individual's behavior, it's all the things that are built in, right, that are working on autopilot, as I say a lot, that support these negative things happening to Black women in my own example, right, in my own lived experience. So there is this point of clarification that I think I'm always listening for and looking to make. Like, wait a minute. Yeah, I think we're getting mixed up on talking about individual responsibility and like social responsibility. Like as a society, as a community, what is happening on a broader level that we need to all be working towards addressing. It's not personal. It's not about you, individual, one person. An individual person cannot create the life experience that I have as a Black woman and as a Black person where I have to face these barriers. Yeah. One person can't do that. It takes a whole lot of people, a whole lot of systems and policies and procedures to make that happen. And that's what I need you to see.
And so, because I guess in answer to the question, do we need an ally in the first damn place? The answer is yes, to address the social aspect of it, the systemic aspect of it, we do need an ally. We need there to be more than one person. And I do like how you clarify the difference between, because if I, like I said earlier, if I was asking myself, do I need an ally? Hell no. I don't need anybody to speak up for me. As you can hear, I'm very outspoken. But if I'm talking about making a change, I do.
Just pass the mic on over.
And I wish you see my face, because I often end up telling somebody that, like, how about you step aside? I got this. But if we're talking about actually making change and shifting, and even if we can't shift, adding pressure to, because pressure busts pipes. So even if we're talking about adding pressure, it's gonna have to be more.
Oprah say that's a tweet.
I love
pressure burst pipes.
That's right.
Hashtag.
So
yes,
we do need an ally.
Yeah, and I would go a step further and say, I mean, even though we've called this, so you want to be an ally, because that's the entry point. But what I really want you to be is a comrade. I want you to be an accomplice. Yep. I don't need an ally who's just like wearing the ally t-shirt, and making posts on Facebook, and that's all you do. I need you to really be in it, because I don't have the energy or time or even like the vulnerability to be around people that are like faking this. It's too important and it's too deep. Like it hurts too much to be exposing myself to the kind of pain that comes from people that are kind of like not really invested, right? Because it takes a lot to live this experience.
And even from that perspective of the weight, and we know, if you are familiar with allyship, social justice work, how the weight often falls on the marginalized. It falls on me as the token Black person to educate everybody who decides they want to have a question in any given meeting or any given post on Facebook or whatever.
And some of us think we should be educating. Like I know some Black people that are like, or women or whatever they're and I know, well, how will they know if you don't educate? Like I can't. I'm tired. Like I can't be educating all the time. If you want me to go and come and do a workshop, then I'll prepare my energy and my soul to be in that space, and I'll come in and I will train and educate you up and down. But I'm just going about my day, and something happens and you want me to like put all the pain and all the emotions and reactions aside to be an educator in that moment? Nah.
And even asking us to do that comes from a place of privilege. And that was what I was going to tie into the point you made before. Like, this place of privilege that the quote unquote majority have access to not be tired, to not carry the weight.
Yes.
And how that flips out and flips backwards on us and really reiterates this again. I keep going back to the do we need, if we're being honest in our work as social justice warriors, we do need to take a break, and we do need to be able to connect with those who have the privilege to carry the weight for us. And even with those privileged folks, sometimes the weight goes on you dealing with your privilege. Like you have the privilege to set it down while I don't. So if you want to be an ally, use your privilege. I don't know if anyone's seen the number of posts that have gone around where there's a woman and she was just talking about like the craziness of how she doesn't have to think twice about what happens with her and the cops, or something bad happens to her, and again, we do recognize intersectionality, so we do know that there are pieces of being a woman that our stories are completely
Absolutely.
dismissed.
Yeah.
But, you know, being a Black person carries its own unique weight. So whatever you decide to align with as part of your allyship, the first big part of that is knowing where, you know, what your role can be in using this privilege. And if you want to be specific about, you know, needing an ally, how about we need you to do less talking and carrying more weight? How about
Yeah.
that? Carry some of this weight to some
Yeah.
of your friends, the places that you can access that I can't. The spaces where there will be an open ear to you, where they immediately shut down to me, whether it's because I'm frustrated, because I have every right.
Because I'm carrying the weight.
That's right. I have every right to be frustrated. And yes, I am the angry Black woman, because again, if you know, if it calls for it, that's what I am.
Yep.
But
Right your finger.
in that event, like, this is a great space for you to speak up, because ain't nobody gonna hear me.
When I do workshops, it's actually intentional to pair people in mixed gender and mixed race partnerships, because there are certain parts of the content that there is a different reaction in the room if the white person presents that part of the content, that part of the training, versus if a Black person or any person of color presents it. The amount of pushback is different. The amount of actually looking at the information and the data that's being presented and trusting that it's valid data is like different. Trainers have learned to, you know, think about like what the content is. And if you have the option to have multiple voices, how do you actually use the fact that people are going to react a certain way to who's presenting, and saying, let's let my white, you know, co-facilitator be the one to challenge you on your white privilege and not me. We're so defensive about it, right? Like whenever we're pushed on anything,
Naturally.
it's human nature.
Naturally.
So when, you know, someone get defensive, like a part of that is okay, because, you know, you have to be pushed and challenged, like the difference in the people that are pushing back and wrestling with it and trying to understand what you're saying, versus the person that's like, I don't believe any of this. Where are you from again? Right. Where'd you get this data? Okay, let me write that down. I've literally heard someone in their training say, I'm going to check that when I get home because I don't believe it. Give me that name. I mean, it's like,
yes, the defensive.
Okay, sir, you go do that.
Yep.
Godspeed.
In that experience, right? This is a place where privilege can show up, right? Because, you know, if you're an ally, you know, in the room, in the moment, what could it mean to align with the presenter who everyone clearly sees it, feels it? Like it, we've all been in the diversity trainings and the difficult conversation trainings where you like feel it and it starts tingling in your body. Like you feel it, right? Like you know what's not being said. You know, or have a very strong conviction about what is motivating this person to attack the presenter. You feel the defensiveness come up, right? So if we're talking about needing an ally and what it looks like in the first place, like this is the place, this is the position, this is where it comes from being an individual thing and you noticing it outside of yourself, right? So this idea that, you know, it does require you to check what your motivation is, right? What motivates you to speak up and be an ally, right? Because if you're doing it,
and what's motivating you to maybe not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for our folks who say, well, I want to be an ally, but find it challenging to speak up in those moments, not to be like aggressive about it, not to, you know, not to censor yourself. There's a way to be an ally in that experience that you just described and not censor yourself and make it about your own feelings. You can simply acknowledge and say, well, it sounds like, in a general way, it sounds like that this room is having a difficulty accepting what the presenter is saying. I wonder if, and then kind of bring it back in a way that is focused on the topic, right? Like bring it back.
That's a little tidbit takeaway for our listeners right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can always enter the conversation with, I wonder if it seems like.
Yep.
I would love to hear our collective thoughts about the tension that's happening in the room right now. What do we think is coming up for us?
Yep.
You can even like just interject in that moment and ask another question. You don't even have to make a statement, but just acknowledging is such a gift in and of itself.
It is so, and that is so, like, it really helps provide the balance. Because again, being an ally doesn't mean I need you to step up and fight for me. Being an ally simply means I need you to help me balance the situation out. And just by asking another question, you've helped me as the presenter balance the room out, right? Because even if it's just a distraction, if I'm a decent facilitator, which most of us are, I mean, because we've had enough training to at least have enough experiences about how to work around when somebody's overtly being racist against us in a setting, right? We know how to navigate this. So that means that the presenter is likely not going to get angry, you know, and if they, so that allows you then to come in and say, well, I wonder if I have a different question. And that shifts and it gives the presenter a way to just kind of regroup and pull everybody in and even highlight the next point. So sometimes it's not centering yourself in the way where you take it on for yourself, because we don't want any sacrifice, right? That's not being an ally. An ally is not sacrificing and you taking an arrow. And I'm saying this intentionally so that our listeners can understand. And if you are having these experiences, reflect on what the motivations for these things are. But it doesn't require you to throw yourself on the blade.
Right.
Sometimes
I think it may feel like that though.
Yes. Good acknowledgement.
But it's not like that, because if you only knew how deep and how, like, the breadth of, you know, the real arrows that we are taking, you would realize, like, man, stepping up and with that question in that moment or whatever is, you know, it goes a long way. And it goes a long way without necessarily costing you anything but discomfort. And it goes a long way for your peers that might be in the room. So it's not just doing it because for the facilitator, but there are peers in the room that may identify with the facilitator or what the facilitator is saying. They may not even be the same race, gender, ethnicity, you know, or sexual orientation, nothing. But you don't know everybody's life story and who's in the room with you. And as we get more and more multicultural, especially here in the United States, you could be looking at somebody that looks straight white and you don't know that they're actually not. So, you know, we've expected and learned in this country to assimilate, right? People to assimilate, and many people have learned how to do that so well that you don't even know that you're in mixed company sometimes. But I digress. What I was really saying is that acknowledgement and that question in that moment is also a gift to your peers that may be having a hard time. And you may be modeling for other people in the room, like, this is how you do it. And this is, you know, that's why you need to do it, to really be a true accomplice. A true comrade.
And I do like the language. We know that allyship is a word that has been around for a minute, and it has taken on various forms, and that again in itself could be a whole nother conversation. But I do like this idea of using the word accomplice or comrade, because we know how important language is. And all of these labels carry a different weight, right? Even thinking about accomplice, like, right? You think, for me, when I hear that word, I think, oh, somebody's about to get into some trouble with me. We about to, and that might be the persona that you want to take on as an ally, right? Or you want to be a comrade and you just want to, like, you know, after the fight is over, you want to get alongside them and, like, you know, just push them forward, encourage them. And, you know, maybe you don't have the wherewithal to, at that moment, to be able to speak up and switch the conversation.
There's so many different ways. We'll have a conversation about that too. Like, what are the, you know, we'll go deeper. I know we've said a lot, I think, already in this conversation about how to do it and what to do, but you're right. There's so many different ways that it can come up. I mean, it just becomes part of, like, behavior and ways of being that, you know, the more you step out of your comfort zone and practice with it, the more you not only notice opportunities to do something or say something or be something that's needed in the moment, the more you'll actually be able to know, like, what to do, what to say, what to be, who to be.
And all of that, those different ways kind of reflect on or kind of relate back to why you need to be an ally in the first place. So, I mean, because this whole episode could have been about all the atrocities that have been going on for the past however many years in various places, all the way up until just last week,
since
right?
1619.
Right. So we can
and before.
do that. We can go over that, but I think the world gets so complacent and wanted to stay with slavery as if today there's nothing to be done. Or we get so caught up in the latest headline of somebody being shot in the middle of the street for no reason. Or we get caught up in, some other group of people being locked in cages or their rights being taken away. Like, those are the things that are large. But I find that getting people to make more of the intentional smaller steps are where we can move this, right? So we go back to our original statement about the system, right? These are to add yourself to a larger body. And if you commit to one little thing, imagine 1,000 people doing that one little thing. That's how change happens. The majority has to have one small little indignation about one little thing, and that collective group is what moves things. But I think people get fearful, as you talked about earlier, about what it means. They see allyship as often this huge sacrifice. And that's not to say it won't happen and it won't occur. But if you look at the changes that have actually happened, it's like the ants, right? The small little ants who just all pick together and collectively.
It's building.
Building
and building and building.
That is where we come in. That's what it means to be an ally in the first place. And that's why we need allyship. Because if you look at all movements in America's history, like, it wasn't done in isolation. So.
No. We're sort of taught to think about people acting alone. I heard someone talk about growing up and learning about MLK, and you think like MLK rose up, like became friends with the right people and gave some speeches and marched, and led some people, and all of a sudden, like, Black people were free. Yay! Like, we're all equal now. His dream came true. And the story is so thwarted, like, it's so distorted from what is actually a long history of people, lots of people fighting and pushing and organizing.
Yes.
He was powerful, yes. He had an impact that you can't dismiss. But he had a whole hell of a lot of people behind him, that some that we have come to know, and thousands more whose name you will never know. But as you talk to people, like, they might be like, oh yeah, my grandfather organized, my great grandfather, my mom, and you start to like, wow, like, there are so many stories of people that did just their little part. To help. They may not have even marched, but like, someone had to watch the kids. Like, who was babysitting? Like, who? Anyway. So there are different ways to support, and there's a lot for everyone to do. Having just had my last job working for someone else in the corporate sector, I also think about Whitney Young. So Darlene and I were college roommates. So, and we were in a program, we met in college in the Whitney Young program. And Whitney Young, during the civil rights era, was like behind the scenes on the corporate side and the business side, like with, working different rooms. Like, he was an ally in a totally different way. And a lot of people don't know about Whitney Young. Shout out KSU, shout out Thoroughbreds, you're so thorough. Hey. But so yeah, just another example of another name that, you don't hear a lot about, but was working and supporting the work in a different way. And let's not even talk about the countless women who don't get any airtime that did everything that they did. But we're just, so.
Well, that's appropriate here because, I mean, we are Black women. We are talking about Black women issues. So that intersection, especially dealing with the civil rights movement, you don't hear about a lot of women at all, and unless they were connected to some famous husband, right? So Coretta, right? So the wives of, like, wait a minute, pause, like. I love being, I'm sure they had their privileges around being, not to downplay a wife. We are wives. But still, like, my identity still stands with my passion and what I do. And so it's often presented in that way. Like, you get recognition for being attached to someone.
Right.
We know that as Black women, we are definitely the foundation and the core of a lot of our households and our, our families. And so just being mindful of how those messages are sent across as well.
Absolutely. So let's talk about considerations. We've already been hitting on it, but what are the things that we want to ask our listeners to consider? We are of the mindset that we are coming to you in this conversation to share our experiences from our perspectives, and it's where we are today. And so we understand that for other people, they're also coming from whatever their perspective is, and there's room for all of us to evolve and grow. But there's some things that we could share for you to consider and think about as you perhaps go down this ally to comrade journey. So what are your thoughts, Darlene, in addition to some of the things that we said about things that we want people to consider, that are the people that are considering being an ally, particularly to Black women?
Yes. So for me, one of the things, just reflecting on being in various rooms, because I've been involved in social justice for a very long time, both in educational settings where I'm advocating for kids, where I'm advocating for parents, where I'm advocating for programming, in my own walk as an academic, being in a PhD program, being the only brown person in the room sometimes. I think what is important is understanding privilege. Understand your privilege. So let's dig into what privilege is, right? Because I recognize as a doctorate degreed, employed, able-bodied, cisgender, and I can keep going, right? I hold a ton of privileges.
Right.
Christian, I am a Christian.
That is a privilege.
I hold all these privileges. So anytime I speak from a place of understanding that I have access to things that some of the people who look like me don't have access to, right? And that is not to put me on a one-up, but I have to understand that with my privilege, that people will see me as presenting myself as a one-up because of my privileges. So if you walk into a room as an ally, I advise you to walk in understanding your privilege. And what that would allow you to do is to be silent first, because your privilege can shade or jade or influence or bias whatever the concerted problem or issue or concern is. So I encourage you to be real clear about how your privilege influences the message that is being presented. It's very important to be mindful of your role in the larger problem when your privilege peaks. Because even myself, with all these privileges, when I walk into a room of people who are dealing with community issues, I have to recognize that I may not be seen as someone who fits into what they perceive as their community.
What they got going on, exactly.
Because I'm not in their community anymore. I was born and raised, and never forget where I came from. But they probably don't see me as being a part of their community. So I need to be quiet. So for all my allies, if we're talking about Black women, and there's such a history dealing with Black women and their issues, and white women and privilege and feminism, and we ain't even gonna get into that conversation about Karen. Not today, because we ain't got time.
We ain't got time for Karen today. Maybe some other day.
But know your privilege and be mindful of how your privilege enters the room.
Yeah.
And that is if I could have you consider anything before you volunteer, before you speak, before you show up in any place, check your privilege. Exclamation point.
And a couple more exclamation points. That was so good. That was so good. And I loved, you just dropped another tweet. Be silent first.
Amen. Be quiet.
Like, you're stepping into something, you need to learn. And this ties into one of my considerations, like something I would like you to consider. I would like you to consider just being a student first. Do your homework. Yes. Google is the gift that keeps on giving. And it's not too hard to tell what are the legit websites and what are not. You know, you can put two and two together and figure it out. Start reading. Like, start with articles, maybe some books, start with some podcasts like this one. You can share this one with your friends. Yep. But just do your homework and dig deep, and know that you're going to run into some new information. You may run into some concepts that are challenging, and that's okay. You're human. If it's new and it's something you've never thought about before, you're going to get pricked, most likely, and you're going to feel challenged. But it's important, right? So if you've gotten to a level of awareness where you're even interested in this conversation that we're having today, you understand, I would hope, how important this is. And so it's going to be hard if you really want to like take this journey. So I would say just be a student and stick with the discomfort.
Oh, that's a tweet. Stick with the discomfort. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we always get into, which will probably come up a lot, is the white guilt. So there are common reactions that allies have when entering spaces of social justice, depending on whatever, you know, arena you're entering in. So we always have a level of guilt for our privilege. And this is for all of our abilities, right? These are all of our privileges. So we all experience them, but particularly for dealing with Black women, it's important to know that white guilt is going to come forward. The misogynist guilt, right? That's going to come forward. Yeah. So just know that. But one of the things you said that I really thought about for our listeners is, well, I can see someone asking, well, what do I do if I have questions and I need clarification? Like, who do I ask? Because I'm reading and I only got one Black friend. Like, it's my Black friend.
I don't want to go to her. I don't want to be that white friend.
Right, exactly. I don't want to tire her out because you just told me earlier that she can't teach me everything. What do we do?
Right. Yeah.
What do you suggest they do, Nikki?
So I would say that there are resources out there and people who have dedicated themselves and decided to sit in that stance of teaching and engaging people. Yep. So you can even follow Instagram, folks on Instagram that will share information in their pages and things like that. But I would just say, like, this isn't any different from being new to anything else, right? So I'll give an example. I started playing tennis like 5 years ago. I had never played tennis before in my life. I maybe had held a racket once before then. And I was like, I want to learn how to play tennis. I was also in a new city, right? So what did I do to be now, 5 years later, on a league team where we play, except for the pandemic. So nothing's been happening for a few months now. But like, I'm playing competitive tennis now. I have a ranking. I've gone through multiple rackets and shoes and things. Like, I do my thing on the tennis court now.
Okay? I mean, she says I ain't no Serena or nothing, but I'm pretty all right.
But I mean, I'm working on a new serve. I was before all of this. That, was pretty impressive, I would say. But there was a journey to get there, and that was 5 years ago, right? So first of all, it takes time. You're not going to get all your answers immediately.
Yes.
Even if you grow up as a Black person,
absolutely,
you still don't know everything. There's too, and you've been learning it all your life. Mm-hmm. So just understand that it's not a race. It's just you're evolving into new awareness and into a new person, really, with new knowledge, and you're going to move around the world differently, and it's going to take time. So what I'm suggesting to you is, you have questions, and that's great. That's, that would indicate to me that you have an eagerness to learn and to absorb more. If you can't find answers in, on Instagram accounts, like, find some podcasts, just do a search, find some books. There are curated lists of books. Mm-hmm. And we, because we're putting ourselves out in this podcast, would love for you to send us some questions. But I would say that my response to that question, Darlene, is always to put the onus back on you. You have to do the work, and you have to find the community, and you have to find the spaces where you can go and listen and learn and gather your questions, and the answers will come. And I found this, organization that was given tennis lessons and city courts, and I signed up. One lesson at a time, a couple lessons at a time. And then after a year, I knew how to hold a racket now.
Right.
I knew how to go towards the ball, not like try to duck from it. And, and the new awareness comes in, and you're like, oh, there are different ways to hold a racket. There's a different grip, not just the single hammer grip that I was taught. Get me started. Like, I can do this. I can turn it this way and spin the ball this, it builds. Right. And by that time, there were more people. I was making friends. My network expanded because I stepped in and got introduced to this thing and that thing. And these people wanted to hit. And this person is now putting together a team. Are you interested? Am I interested? Like, it will start to snowball, is what I'm saying. And you will have spaces where you can have conversation with like-minded people who are maybe in the same journey and in the same spot in the journey as you are, and people that are like really excited and eager to have you become part of their movement and part of their building, and they will be willing to engage you. But I will just say, please don't walk up to random people in front of elevators, as I have been in restaurants, in stores. Do not do that. That's not a consideration. That's just a clear statement. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do that. It's relational. Build relationships, do work, dig deep.
Yes.
And you'll get answers as you go.
I played tennis in high school.
Yeah.
I never went beyond that, but I did play tennis. And so thinking about my experience as a tennis player and thinking about how, even in your example, like the coach has never held the racket for you. So I'm not going to hold the racket. I'm not going to jump in your game.
That doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Like, how does that work? Yeah.
How about you find other white allies and tap into what they've explored,
what they've learned. Yes.
Because what you'll realize is that my Blackness and my experience, I could never tell you what it means to be a white ally.
So true.
Because I'm a whole Black person fighting.
So true.
So,
yeah.
Instead of looking for your coach to play your game, as a coach, I'm going to tell you, how about you go find other players at your level?
Yep.
And if you want to learn a new technique, find you a player at that level who knows that technique. And
that's so true. That's so true, because we would meet other people.
Absolutely.
And then we'd be like, hey, let's meet up and hit. And you'd be like, oh, coach is helping me with this. Oh yeah, coach, you know what really helped me? He told me this new thing. And it clicked, and you're like, oh, I could try that.
Yep.
Perfect.
Ding, ding.
Yeah. Science is telling us that the human brain can be rewired. You can create new neural pathways in your brain. So this is to give you hope. When I said earlier, stick with the discomfort, stepping up, saying something, doing something, being something or someone who's needed in the moment. And over time, you start to be able to not only pick those moments up, like when something is needed, someone is needed, something needs to be said, but like you'll know what to do and say. It's actually backed up scientifically. Like, your brain creates new connections as you learn and absorb new information, and your behavior evolves. You can continue to rewire your brain, adapt to new awareness and to new behavior. And I want to end with a quote. Are we good? What do you think about wrapping up?
I think we've left them with enough tidbits. We've covered enough topics in depth to get them thinking and reflecting. So yeah, I guess the last thing I would say is, in all of this, one thing could be journaling, because as we're getting new information and we're trying to make sense of it, and we don't want to rely too heavily on too many other people, or, we feel like we don't have anywhere to go, you can always write your thoughts out. And from that, just that reflecting can help center you and what your needs are, and then can help bring together some thoughts and ideas that you can present to someone else, so that even if you do find yourself at the doorstep of one of your Black friends or something like that, that you're being intentional with their time and you're not just out here just asking questions that can be Googled. So yeah. So I think with that, this is a great space for a quote.
It reads, Black people do not need allies. We need people to stand up and take on the problems born of oppression as their own without remove or distance. We need people to do this even if they cannot fully understand what it's like to be oppressed for their race or ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability, class, religion, or other marker of identity. End quote. The quote is by Roxane Gay. She is the author of a book called Bad Feminist. I love the quote because it summarizes a disconnect that I think exists sometimes with folks that call themselves allies. They can step into and out of the problems. You said it earlier, they can put it down. They can put the weight down and go on about their life. They don't have to look at it again until the next person gets shot. Every time my Black husband walks out of the house, I'm not breathing the same until he gets back in the door. Every single time. I don't get to put that down at all. So what Roxane Gay talks about in this quote about standing up and taking on the problems that were born of oppression as your own is like the piece of it that I just like, oh.
We're going to end it there for now. We want to make sure we hear from you, so send us your thoughts on the question of the day or a topic you want us to address. You can find us on Instagram at wannabeanally2020 or email us at wannabeanally@gmail.com. That's wannabeanally, WANNABEANALLY 2020 and @gmail.com.
And you can find me, Olanike, at my website, www.mosaic4equity.com. That's Mosaic, the digit 4, equity.com. Follow me on Facebook and on LinkedIn at Mosaic Consulting and on Instagram at Mosaic4Equity. That's Mosaic 4, the digit, equity.
And you can find me, Darlene, at my website, www.parents, that's plural, parents, zone, ZONELLC.com. And follow me on Facebook at Darlene Davis, that's DAUNI, and Parent Zone LLC, and on Instagram at PZ Parenting Coaching.
All right. Bye.
Bye. See ya.